Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Bètá Convo. I am your host, Nadia Ike. I hope you guys missed me as much as I missed you. For today's episode, I am excited about who we have here today. I mean, for a lot of people who don't know this, I actually learned how to triple jump on YouTube. So my start to this whole, world-class athlete thing started on YouTube. And today's guest is one of the people that was fundamental to my development. I watched all his videos. I used to watch his long jump, triple jump videos, and I'm so excited. And it's truly an honor and a full circle moment here to really welcome a jump legend, Khotso Mokoena. And for those who don't know, Khotso is actually an Olympic medalist, a multi-time world championship medalist. And honestly, this guy has medaled at every major championship you could possibly imagine. So I'm very excited to talk to him, not just because I'm a triple jumper, but also, what he's done for Athletics Africa, for African athletes, throughout his career. And so, Khotso, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
I'm really excited to talk to you today. And so before we jump into today's session, why don't you just, give the audience, I know very few people who don't know who you are. Why don't you give the audience a little bit of a background of who you are and, your journey so far?
Yeah. So obviously my name is Khotso Mokoena. Most people prefer to call me Godfrey. But actually my first name is Khotso. Godfrey is actually my second name.
Okay.
So, and I'm a long jump, triple jumper, former African record holder for the long jump, and I'm currently national record holder for the triple jump since 2005. And I'm also an entrepreneur.
So that's a very modest introduction. That's a very modest introduction. And let's just jump right into it. I think, for you, what you've been able to do for the jumping events and for Africa on the world stage has been incredible. I mean, not only were you a long jumper, but you were also a triple jumper, and you were dominating in both. So kind of give us a little bit of a background how your foundation started with both of those.
Yeah, so actually, I started all the way, when I was still in high school. I was one of those kids that actually, I thought sports was everything, I still do, and all I ever did was just train hard and just found myself being able to go compete overseas. And I remember 2004, I went to my very first youth. I went to the youth world championship where I actually won gold in the triple jump and silver in the long jump. Actually, that's when I really thought that, there's a bit of a future here, and I was still in school then. I thought, what, this is something that I want to pursue, a lot of my peers, they went different ways, but I wanted to continue to do sports and just excel in that. And just being a young kid in the year 2000, when I was watching TV, sitting with my moms, I said, one day I would like to be one of those guys on the podium, and fast track 8 years later to then, 2008, I was actually one of the guys on the podium. So, and it has been such a marvelous experience with me in the track and field. I think I wouldn't, if I had to choose again, I think I wouldn't choose it.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's been incredible, but it seems like, South Africa has been able to really figure out how to create a powerhouse for the sprints and the jumps, and in a way that none of the other African countries have done. I mean, we have Kenya with the distance events, but I just think in terms of South Africa, you guys have been able to create a very dynamic athletics program, where you have all these incredible athletes coming out. And can you talk to us a little bit about what you think has made South Africa that powerhouse in terms of, investing in talent at a very early age and cultivating that?
Yeah, I think, with South Africa, it's obviously each country have their own different way and different strategies that they implement. I think the best thing that South Africa did was to invest in young talent, from preliminary school, from the young talent, just to nurture that that generation all the way up. It took some time before athletics in South Africa, before top athletes actually started to show up, but that's all because of the young generation that was coming in, the strategy that our Olympic Federation and our National Athletics Federation had. We just had to be patient until that crop started to come through. And right now, the other crop is starting to come through. Besides the generation when I was still competing, there's a new crop that's just coming through. So it's really good. I think the development phase has been quite good.
And so in terms of, it's obviously an investment that the country made into the athletes, right? And so from your perspective, how can other African countries that are watching, because I mean, they watch you and they see you, oh, he went to the Olympics and medaled at the Olympics and then medaled at World Championships multiple times. And they're like, why can't we do that, right? What would you say that, African countries that are watching on the government level, what do they need to do to invest into talent? We all keep saying they need to invest into talent, they need to invest in talent. Yeah. But what are the actionable steps that these countries can be doing to invest into talent, to ensure that we are creating people like you, we're creating people like Van Niekerk, we're creating, that talent across the board for all the African countries?
Yeah, absolutely. And you are quite correct. Everyone is saying that, we need to put in more investment into this, we need to put more time into this. But actually, what really works is a strategy. What South Africa did the best was that they were able to use, top athletes to go to schools and just have these coaching clinics on a regular basis. A lot of organizations and a lot of countries make the mistake of having the coaching clinics, but then they would have it maybe once, twice, or 3 times a year. It's ongoing. I think that's what makes it. If that is ongoing, you get to see where the talent is. You're able to pick from that and actually start to grow from there. So I think ongoing talent identification is quite important. And I think that's what we're able to do well at schools.
Right. And it's funny because that's an element that I personally had never even thought about, is investing in the coaching as well. I think we all keep saying invest in the athletes, and that means financial investment. But also another point that you just raised that I personally never thought about is investing in the people that are teaching the athletes and making sure that we have those people that are able to nurture that talent and cultivate it in the long term. So let's just take it back to you a little bit more, just because I'm fascinated with your journey as a jumper, and how you were able to have longevity in the career that you had. Like, that's very rare as well, because I mean, not only were you triple jumping, but you were long jumping too, and you were able to have a very long career, and so that's very rare. Those are 2 very rare combinations. So what was it for you that made you the legend that you are?
I think what's most important, actually, people like, if you watch the other guys like Kim Collins, he also had a quite long longevity. But I think for me, mostly was the fact that I wouldn't change what is working. If something, if the strategy is really working for me, I would just want to improve on that and not change it. Why change something that works? And also just being able to take care of yourself. I think that's very important, especially when there's so much noises and so much things that you can do, especially when you were a young athlete. When I was a young athlete, I tried to stay away from all the noises and everything else that comes with it, and just stay on the field, stay training hard and just believing in the goals, and not try to divert my energy into other things. I mean, also when you are young, it's easy to go out partying all the time and just and lose the time that you can actually use as to become a great athlete, because that takes away from you. I mean, as an athlete, you need more rest, you need more time. So I mean, all of that plays a part.
Right. And in terms of, personally, one of my biggest struggles as a jumper is, I think there really, at least in the US, there really isn't that much coaching, right? And so a lot of the things that I had to learn, I had to kind of figure that out on my own. And I'm not sure if, I know you had your coach, but did you stay with the same coach throughout your career? And was there any point in time where you had to figure this stuff out on your own as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I hear what you're saying with that. When in 2008, a lot of people don't know this. I actually went to the Olympic Games without a coach. And
wow.
when I won that silver medal, I didn't have a coach.
You didn't have a coach.
So I mean, it was a little bit hard, But I mean, thinking of all the past years before that, a lot of work was done, and the hunger. I had a lot of hunger, and I knew what I had to do to be able to perform, and just there was a lot of belief in myself. I knew that I was able to do something,
Mm-hmm.
So many months prior to the Olympic Games, myself and my coach had parted ways, So I was just thinking, this is an Olympic year. What am I going to do, But I had to just use the experience that I had from the previous years. I was just coming out of 2007 at the World Championships, where I was 5th in that heated long jump final, where Andrew Howe, Evan Saladino, Dwight Howard was in the field. That was crazy. I just came from that. And going into the Olympic Games without a coach, it was quite difficult, but I was able to figure out some things myself and just stay positive.
So I mean, going back to that point, how did you maintain your mental resilience, like not having a coach and knowing, I think at least your generation of jumpers, you guys were dominant. It was one of those where I feel like more so now we have a couple of people that we know are going to be in the top, whereas you guys had a collection of jumpers that it could be anyone's day at any time. So how did you maintain that mental strength, to go into the competition and medal, knowing you didn't have
it wasn't easy, I have to say, to be able to go through something like that. I don't think it will be easy for any athlete, we athletes, especially us jumpers, you must have a coach right next to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's an advantage for you. So at that point, it was a little bit of a disadvantage. But I mean, I'm one athlete that took since high school. I took meditation and working on my mental aspect quite seriously, and I still do today. So I think that helped me a lot. That I was able to collect myself and just think of only the good things that I can achieve, only the good things that I can actually action out during the competition, and I only focused on that. And in the qualification rounds, I think I qualified. Back then we were only taking 12 guys into the finals. Yeah. It's unlike today where they only take 9. Back then we were only taking 12 guys into the finals, and I qualified 11th. Going into the finals, So we go back to the hotel room and you're thinking, do I stand any chance here? Or you go back and you say, no, tomorrow's a new day. I gotta fight more.
Wow. And so from your perspective, what can the younger generation, so I'm sure obviously Fabrice Zango and his indoor world record, and I mean he's under Teddy, so he's in good hands in terms of the direction. But what kind of advice can you give to the younger generation of jumpers that are coming up? Because I think one thing that we miss more than your generation is having that mental toughness, that grit to I was 11 qualification, but tomorrow I'm going to medal. What advice can you give to our generation, in terms of, having that?
So I think the best advice I can give is that, athletes, they'll have to continue working on their minds every day and just visualizing their competitions, visualizing the field, visualizing exactly what it is that they have to achieve. So that plays a huge part, because then it helps you to feel like when you get into the arena, you feel like it's familiar, even if you were not there. But when you work with mind, it feels like it's familiar. I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't have, or they have lost. And I think that's just one thing that can help an athlete to go from one place to another.
I 100% agree. And I think it's so funny because I think about all my best performances, and they were moments where I had primed myself to visualize that and visualize what that success felt like, because actually your brain cannot tell between things that have happened as reality and things that you've imagined. And so if you constantly imagine that win and what that feels like when you're in that moment, your brain is just replicating what it's already experienced, right? And that's something that I think it's so crucial to success, even beyond the field. And so we're going to actually take a break. And when we do come back, we're going to talk about how this winning mindset has been able to translate from off the field into some of the successful things that you're doing. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back here, we will check in with Khotso and find out about everything else he's working on beyond the sport. Welcome back to Bètá Convo. If you're just joining us now, we are here with South African jump legend Khotso Mokoena, one of my favorite jumpers of all time. Khotso, are you still here?
I'm still here.
Absolutely. So before the break, we were talking about, your career as an athlete, how you basically were able to, become a successful jumper. And so now we're going to shift the gears a little bit and talk about your career outside the sport and how, the things that you've been able to accomplish has been able to, help you transition into a successful career outside of the sport. So before we jump into that, why don't you just give us a little bit of a background of what you're doing now, where you are career-wise, and then we can talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, right now I'm a CEO, founder of Roadvertise Ads. So the company does advertising and marketing, and we are out on the road telling stories about different brands.
Okay, and what was your journey into that career like? Did you work in advertising before? How did that kind of transition from pro athlete to that?
Yeah, so the story is quite interesting because when I decided this is the route that I wanted to take, I wasn't working at any advertising company at all. But I knew that being an athlete, if you're an athlete, you're a brand, and you affiliate yourself with different companies. You are a brand yourself. You are actually an advertisement yourself. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to harness all that energy into something that I can build a long term, and I always believe that athletes are very competitive, even at the corporate world. I think if we just channel our energy towards the right thing or towards something that we believe that we can do correctly, we can actually achieve so much more, even outside of sports. And this is when I decided, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to be able to assist brands. For many years, brands have assisted me as a brand myself. So I thought, there is a bit of synchronization, if I may call it so.
Absolutely. And so I think it's very important to have this conversation, and I do this with all the athletes that are on this show. I think that one part of the story is this whole brand alignment with athletes. You were fortunate enough to be world-class Olympic, medalist and everything like that, to have contracts that were at your footsteps, right? And fast forward into this day and age, it's not the same. And I think it's even harder to get a contract, even with people that are, successful at the world-class level, right? And I am not sure what the shift has been. I can personally attribute part of it to social media, and that also really shifting brand focus. But also in terms of for athletes who are in this day and age who are looking for that type of brand sponsorship, from the corporate side, what advice do you have for athletes who are looking for that?
Yeah, so I would say that, one of the things that I suffered with was to put myself out there. Athletes, we like to be reserved. We like to hold on to ourselves and just, we like to be in our own world, and when I got into the corporate world, I realized that, you actually have to, you must open up yourself and just put yourself out there, so that brands are able to work with you. You have to be able to reinvent yourself, if I have to call it that way. Put yourself out there. Just don't. The old way of just holding to yourself and hoping that someone will come to you. These days, it doesn't work. You have to put yourself out there. And social media has also been another tool for athletes to use it. People might say that social media is not working. Actually, social media is working if you just channel it correctly. And there are a lot of brands. Brands want to affiliate themselves with someone who's putting themselves out there and is able to resemble themselves with the brand. So it's important to put themselves out there.
Right. And this is, and I 100% agree with that. I think there's one side of it where it's the branding piece, right? Where it's using social media to advantage. And, for you don't come from that generation of social media. I think you guys, your generation was really different because it had to be your performance. Whereas now there are people who are not necessarily the top in the world, but they have the followers, and that's where their brand is coming from. But then I also think there's another side to all of this, which is where my interest lies the most, right? Where there are athletes who are capable of more than just, a shoe deal, right? And for me, I always use myself as an example. I graduated from an Ivy League institution, right? One of the top universities in the world. And so I think for a brand, I could bring more to the brand than just posting on my Instagram, right? And so from a corporate side, in an African, corporate entity, right? What is it with corporate entities, and why aren't we looking at athletes as that dynamic way? Why aren't corporate, and I don't know if your company is looking at athletes and looking for athletes to do something. If they are, I'm available. But AthleticsAfrica, I said that. But on a serious note, right? Why aren't corporate entities approaching athletes with that mindset? Like, how can we partner together? The Olympics, hopefully it's happening. How can we partner together to create an opportunity where we're leveraging the skills that you have as more than an athlete to do other things for my company? Why are companies thinking in that way?
So I think right now, a few companies, from what I've seen in the couple of months, is that, or maybe a year or so, it's still early in that journey that companies are taking now. They're starting to open up a little bit more to sports people, in terms of. But the biggest problem is that athletes don't want to reinvent themselves. They don't want to get into the space and actually push themselves into the space so that companies can actually see that you've got more that you can offer. Athletes have so much focus, they've got so much drive, they've got so much hunger than a normal person, if I may put it that way. I'm not saying people don't have hunger, but they do. But athletes have so much fighting spirit in them that they need to be able to offer that to corporate companies. Some corporate companies are starting to see that, and they're starting to want to work with athletes, which is a good thing. So I think that's where athletes have to start. They have to start in just giving themselves out there. Giving themselves out there. And corporates, it's going to take a little bit longer for them to actually open up to sports people to work with, but eventually it's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I think the one thing is, for somebody who's able to go from barely making it into the final and then going and winning a medal, clearly there's so much you could bring to a company, whether or not you've ever worked in that field. And I think one of the things that we're trying to do here with these conversations is really to get people to see, as athletes, to see that it's possible to translate that mindset, right? To translate that hunger and that passion into other things that you're doing, right? I think we have a question here that I'm going to actually, yes. So we do have a question. It says, what was your initial thought when you heard that an African had finally broken 18 meters in the indoor triple jump after Fabrice Lapierre smashed a world record? What was your thought on that?
I texted him immediately.
You did?
I sent him a text. I said, bro, what are you doing? He's like, I'm hungry, man. I said, I know, I can see that, And I actually said to Zango that, you can easily go 1850.
Yeah.
Watching that jump, there's so much that he's got to give. And also, speaking of hunger, he's been hungry to do it, and the fact that now he's partnered with a coach that actually understands him and actually who's done it before. I think the team they just make a great team.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think for me, in multiple ways, I think the world is finally realizing Africa, right? Absolutely. On a cultural level, on a social level, athletics, everything. And so it's almost like everything is just coming around in full circle for us. And I'm really excited for the next wave of Africans that are completely dominating in everything that we're doing. And I'm excited that Athletics Africa gets to be in the forefront of that with Bètá Convo. But let's take it back to, the conversation that we're having a little bit. And I want to dive in a little bit more before we end here. So the whole thing is that, athletes need to see themselves as dynamic, need to see themselves as I'm able to bring X, Y, and Z to the table of any corporate entity, right? And I think it's true. I 100% agree that that's true. But I do think that in Africa, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Absolutely. Right? And so for you, as a CEO and a former athlete, who has experienced things on both sides, what are some of the steps that you think that your company can take to be a pioneer of this thing, to be really forward thinking in how people are thinking of athletes and their brands and creating opportunities for athletes? What can your company do?
Yeah, so actually, now that you're asking me of this, we already have a few projects that are lined up that we're going to use a few of the South African athletes into the implementing them into the projects, because that's what I believe. I believe that there's a fine line that the athletes have, that mental that they can bring, that mental game that they can bring into the corporate world. But the other thing that's very important is that athletes must go and knock. Don't just rely on your manager. You must learn to go and knock. Go and knock. And just learn from that. I mean, being an athlete, you are a business yourself. And you have to treat it that way. So you must learn to go and knock and to actually go through that experience and just get strong from there. But I mean, that's the only way to get better.
Absolutely. And I think that's another thing. It's just athletes need to take initiative. And part of that comes from the self-confidence to do so, right? And so the hope is that as we get to share more stories of athletes who are doing more than just the sport, we start to encourage other athletes to take that dive and take that jump and take that step into that direction, right? Before we do end, I do have a few more questions. So the next question that I do have for you is, speaking of that confidence, I'm sure when you started working in the corporate world, not having that experience of working in advertising, there had to be a learning curve, right? There had to be something that, you were just like, oh my God, what am I doing? What is this? How do you navigate that? How do you navigate that insecurity? How do you navigate that fear? And how do you go about, becoming this confident CEO that you are now? How did that transition happen for you?
It was hell. I have to tell you, it's a whole lot of different ball game, But what is identical to sports and what we experience as athletes is losing. That is identical. It's losing. As an athlete, you lose a lot. You get to lose so many competitions. You get to lose a lot, and you're gonna experience that in the corporate world. It's not gonna be as easy. So, but the nice thing is that you're really experiencing losing doesn't actually hurt you that much. In fact, you look forward to losing so that you can take the next one. So I think that's just one positive thing that as an athlete or as a sports person that you have. So you have to dwell on that. You have to dwell on that because you're going to face a lot of challenges. And for me, it was a little bit tough, and it was also exciting to know that, okay, I always compared everything to what I went through as a sportsman, in the business world. If this is happening, I have to look at what I did when I was competing and winning. What did I do? I went and changed my training strategy. I went and visualized a little bit better. And I communicated better to my coach. So I did the same thing as I found out, okay, did they quite understand my pitch? How can I fix it? Then I go back and I knock again tomorrow for the same competition, but a little bit more confident and a little bit more research as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that resonates with me as well, is the fact that for me, what made me successful in my career outside of the sport was when I finally switched on that mental note that's like, you know, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm an athlete and I'm also a professional woman, right? And those things should feed each other at all times. And you said it well. Like, I think about the worst experience performance-wise that I had was at 2018 Commonwealth Games. That was my most embarrassing performance. Nothing in my life in work has compared to that yet. And so to me, is if I can deal with that embarrassment, that failure in front of the whole world, you know, I can walk into any room and give a pitch. And if everybody hates it, that's fine. But I've experienced what that is, you know, what that is. And I think that's what athletes have that people don't have, is we've been able to experience every single range of emotion through sports, that we can carry that into anything else. And so, like you're saying, going back to, you know, what do I need to do? Do I need to communicate with my coach better? Do I need to study my videos better? And it's the same thing. And we already have the toolbox. We already have the toolbox to succeed. We just have to see that. We just have to realize that. I'm so excited that you said that. And this has been an incredible conversation personally for me, because you're one of my idols. So I'm very grateful to have you on this show. But before we do close, right, I do always want to ask this question to everyone. What is there a secret talent? We know you're a talented athlete. We know you got the business thing down. We know you're great at, you know, everything that you're doing. But is there a secret talent that you have that no one knows, and we want to share that?
Yeah, I got one or two. You know,
okay.
So I was a ballroom and Latin dancer.
You're a ballroom dancer?
Yeah. In fact, I thought I was going to be a full-time ballroom dancer, you know, before athletics took over, and I was doing a little bit of gymnastics as well.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense, and that makes a lot of sense, because a lot of gymnasts end up being very good jumpers. So I'm not surprised about that. But ballroom dancing, wow, that's a first. But anyway, I mean, thank you so much for, you know, your time today. We really appreciate all the knowledge that you shared with us. I'm sure the viewers really appreciated it as much as I did. If you enjoyed this conversation, please feel free to continue within the chat. Khotso, it's really been a pleasure. And for all our viewers, I hope you were as excited as I am today of having this legend here with us. If you enjoyed the conversation, like I said, continue to have it in the chat. We will be here again next week. Don't miss it. Thank you so much. It's been real. Have a good rest of your Sunday.
Thank you. You too.
Audio Jungle.